6,285 people were murdered in this country between January and March of this year.
The Police Minister Bheki Cele says that while this is the lowest increase in the last little while, more needs to be done to fight the high rates of violence in our country. He presented the crime stats for the first quarter of this year.
Murder increased countrywide by 3.4% between January and March 2023. This is the lowest single-digit decrease recorded compared to the previous 3 quarters. Though it is a decrease, these are not just figures but human lives that should be protected at all costs. This is why these figures prompt us as a police to double up policing efforts to decrease conduct crimes. 6,285 people were killed with either a firearm, knife, sharp and blunt instruments, stone and even bare hand between January and March this year. The majority of the killing took place in KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape and Gauteng provinces, with arguments, vigilantism and robberies topping the motive list of murder.
Minister Cele has also raised concern about the marked increase in gender-based violence cases during the fourth quarter of the year. Almost 1,000 women were murdered between January and March.
Women of this country continue to be stalked by violence, mainly at the hands of men. A double-digit percentage increase of 21.5% was recorded in the attempted murder figures for the fourth quarter. This means there were 1,485 attempted murders of women in South Africa in the first 3 months of this year. 969 women were killed in the same period and over 15,000 women were assaulted, and the SAPS are investigating assault GBH cases of this.
Let's talk more about the crime statistics now. We're joined by Dr. Jean Redpath, Senior Researcher at Africa Criminal Justice Reform at the Dalla Omar Institute. A very good evening to you, Doctor. Good to speak to you. So, why is the pattern of violent crime in this country continuing in the way that it is, despite multiple announcements of interventions and attempts to actually change things around?
So we have to look at the broader context. The 2 years of lockdown were absolutely ruinous for South Africa, both in terms of turning around our police force, because there were attempts to begin to turn around the police force, and also because of the devastating impact on employment. And you cannot turn around a police force in a short amount of time, particularly not one the size of SAPS, which at its largest comprised 200,000 people employed within the SAPS. So we had not only lockdown, but now we have load shedding, which you don't need to be a crime analyst to infer that that will also have a negative effect on opportunistic crime that may take place during the hours of darkness, and which also allows crimes such as copper theft and infrastructure theft to occur when there's no power feeding into those structures.
And when you look at just the numbers, even the children in this country are still not being spared. For example, during January and March 2023, 67 rapes in this country were committed on school premises. 6 cases of rape reported to have happened at special schools.
Yes, it's obviously extremely concerning. However, with sexual offences, what one does want is for them to be reported and to be brought to the attention of the state. What would be far worse is if they were happening and no one was bothering to report them. So one always has to interpret sexual offences with some degree of caution, because reporting rates are such a big factor in terms of how many cases might be brought to the attention of the authorities.
What about KZN? Is KZN getting enough attention when you consider the high levels of crime there? As far as murders, 1,589 between January and March. That's a staggering figure, but Gauteng is also not too far behind with 1,556. In KZN recently, we've seen a trend of people being killed in mass shootings. Should we be doing more as far as focusing on the province as a crisis area?
So both KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng are both sitting at levels of homicide which are 50% higher than they were before the lockdown. And that is of extreme concern. The rate of acceleration, the rate of increase has tempered slightly in KwaZulu-Natal that we see in this latest data, but not in Gauteng as well, but it's still a 10% increase. In KwaZulu-Natal, what I would worry about is that the major metro has been spared some degree of load shedding, which is going to kick in again. There really needs to be a lot more attention paid to our two largest provinces, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, in terms of resources. KwaZulu-Natal has been routinely under-resourced, particularly in deep rural areas where very many murders take place.
And communities are often urged to be more involved to help in turning the tide when it comes to crime in South Africa. What should that involvement by communities look like when these are the same people who say, for example, when they do something as basic as go to the police station or try to call through the 10111 number, they don't get a satisfactory outcome?
Now, the state has to come to the party before communities can be called upon to do anything. And I think one needs to look at the diverging trends in three provinces. So Northern Cape, Free State, and Western Cape are all showing decreases, even decreases compared to the pre-lockdown period. Now, but Northern Cape and Free State are very small provinces, so it's easier to turn policing around in those very small provinces. Western Cape has seen a massive deployment of City of Cape Town resources, specifically in hotspot areas. We see most of the decrease in murder taking place in those hotspot areas. Now, this is an intervention by the provincial government in partnership with the City of Cape Town, and it is trying to fill the gaps that are apparent in terms of police resourcing in these very, very violent areas, which, again, have been routinely under-resourced in the same way that the deep rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal have been under-resourced.
Dr. Jean Redpath, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.